I hold the opinion that the PSP was way ahead of its time for Sony consoles. That thing would probably bang if it dropped nowadays. That's what I'm talking about. If you were one of the lucky ones to have your parents buy you a PSP back when you were a young lad, then you are just like me. What's up, twin? And then you fried that PSP by drowning it in your fruity juice drink you got from the store. You are also just like me. What's up, twin? But maybe, perchance, you happen to play 2 specific Star Wars Battlefront games on that said PSP. Those 2 games were Star Wars Battlefront Renegade Squadron and Star Wars Battlefront Elite Squadron. I have so many gaps in my memory that I confuse one game for another a lot. It's actually crazy. When I think on these games as a child in my brain, I have fond feelings towards Renegade specifically, even though I have no real specific memories I can call back to. Elite Squadron, I have even less memories of. I didn't even think I played it at first, but then I found my case in my little cabinet. I also played the original Battlefronts back on PS2 long before I got a PSP. And I have way more vivid memories on that, especially playing split screen with like family or something. Like I can remember the iconic loading animations, the Sarlacc pit from Tatooine, and flying spaceships real close to the ground on Battlefront 1. I can also remember a lot of each hero from Battlefront 2. I remember the Rancor pit in the Hutt Palace map.
Oh my god, bro.
Kamino was extremely memorable as well, let alone Battlefront 2's story that would blow the minds of 6-year-olds across the world. Battlefront games slammed and always have. So I held them relatively high in my head, but I still kind of tempered my expectations going into these PSP games. Tempered because they are still PSP games at the end of the day. And I never got a chance to play against actual real humans in the multiplayer mode on the PSP or the PS2. So I wasn't too pressed about not being able to get into it, being this far removed from the release. But now I think is the time to correct that course. We should revisit these games for the first time in probably over 20 years. I'm Moonsout, and I'm gonna play Star Wars Battlefront, Renegade Squadron, and Elite Squadron the definitely legal and totally legal way that breaks no laws at all, because I am playing them legally. How did these games iterate on and evolve the Battlefront formula? Are they possibly not as good as their predecessors? But also, most importantly, are they just as fun as I remember them being? So the first thing I did when loading Renegade Squadron up for the first time was to see what the campaign was like, and I will be doing the same thing for Elite Squadron as well. But first, I think you gotta tip your hat to the people who gave these crazy customization options right from the menu. You can modify body types, head types, and your primary and secondary colors for all 4 factions. You even have access to like this currency-based loadout system where you can choose weapons and perks and primaries and secondaries and all types of stuff right here in the menu. Like, what the hell is a carbonite freeze gun, bro? They were on to something. Hello, it's me from the future. It sucks, by the way. Okay, continue now. But basically, remember how you had classes in Battlefront 2? They had highly specific and curated loadouts. Some of them did have abilities alongside these loadouts to make certain classes fit into certain playstyles. Like the Rebels, both in Spy, had an incinerator, invisibility, and a regeneration ability. Renegade lets you mix and match these loadout choices in a way we have never seen until now, using that point system. Items with stronger effects will cost more than items that have lesser effects. For example, you could even reduce your own health, let's say, and trade the points saved for maybe increased movement speed or increased rate of capturing command posts. Or maybe you take a really strong ability like the personal shield, well, that's going to cost you a quarter of the budget to spend on firepower or sustain equipment like the health ammo packs that you can throw on the ground. It's, I think, a very awesome way to add customization and character building to a game like Battlefront. It allows players to be hyper specific about the kind of character that they want to play and the way they want to engage with battles in the game. But to get back on track though, does this impact the main campaign thingy? The thing I was actually gonna talk about a little bit ago. Let's check it out. Per usual, the opening crawl of the campaign sets up the context. We are in a post-Empire world, and an archivist is conducting research on the rebel forces, and she is able to come into contact with a guy named Cole Sarah. He's a rebel commander of none other than the Renegade Squadron branch of the rebellion. She wants him to share some stories about Renegade and their impact on the uprising against the Empire.
I must say, Commander, you are a most difficult man to track down.
I find I generally live longer that way. What can I do for you?
Also, the cutscenes are these sort of concept arty, static pieces of art that are narrated over, and I find it charming, given the context of the story being delivered through a narration of Renegade Squadron's adventures, rather than something happening in real time. To me, it feels like it's thematic fit with the vibes of the storytelling, even if it's not good old-fashioned pre-rendered 3D full-on animated cutscenes. I think it's cool. The gameplay in Renegade Squadron operates a lot like Battlefront 2 from the get-go. It tosses you into a screen that is a map of Yavin 4 for level 1. You can already see command posts are there, and in the background you can see your camera free floating above some landmark in the map as well. Compare this to a load-in on Battlefront 2. It's incredibly similar and also good vibes from the first time you see it. What this tells me to my brain is that I shouldn't expect much of a deviation from Battlefront 2 going forward, but given my false memories and in my heart, I was personally expecting a bit more of a departure for sure. But we'll learn more, we'll see more later on. In this map screen, they also give you the personalization and customization menus, same as the ones on the title screen. This is awesome. This is like in Black Ops 2 or something. The game lets you choose what guns and what perks you want to take in right before each mission. So I picked some loadout options, regrettably forgetting that I'm not just playing any game, I'm playing a PSP game.
Renegade Squadron, that chance I promised you to hit back at the Empire? Well, it's come sooner than I thought.
It's a PSP game with a PS5 controller on a PC. And if you don't know somehow, the PSP was a handheld console with no right-hand analog stick. Also, if you don't know somehow, ever since the days of Halo Combat Evolved, right sticks have been integral to shooting bad guys in the shooty games, especially while using a controller. I was 2 years old when Halo came out, so all the shooters I have played for as far back as I can remember have always used right sticks to aim. Almost all games I have ever played that operate in a 3D space use the right stick to look around. So after 20 some odd years of conditioning, it did take me a thick amount of relearning to get my fingers on board with using my left stick to move, but also aim, and only horizontally aim. You can't aim up unless you go into first person with the button. And the only way you could strafe left and right is by holding the right hand trigger, which also does the auto aiming. That allows you to enter a sort of lock strafe like it's Ratchet and Clank, and from there, I was just hoping and praying the auto aim carries me for the rest of the fight. And for the most part it does. The auto aim does carry you. The only way this control scheme is even bearable is if I turn my sensitivity basically to the highest it can go. Otherwise it'll take me 7 business days to react to anything. But back to the actual game, another great feature is that while at any friendly command post, you can walk up to it and change any aspect of your loadout on the fly. So not only are loadouts accessible from before you even load up a game, they are also accessible in a game before you spawn in, and you can access the system while alive and running around in the battle at a command post. They really thought of everything. Now I'm glazing loadouts right now, but it's such a key component to making this game feel different, at least a little bit, from the previous ones. That and the story mode I should be focused on. So first level is super simple. It teaches you the basics of the basics. Shoot your gun at the enemy, shoot rocket at the tank, capture points, and win the game. Buddy, you gotta get out of the grenades, man. I'm actually starting to get quite surprised, but I'm not shocked how similar things feel to Battlefront 2 right from the start. It's the classic case of if it ain't broke, don't fix it, I guess. I'm not mad about that. I love video games of the shooting variety, especially the Battlefront 2 kind. So between each mission, we get more of that narration, comic book style storytelling. I feel like they wanted to be reminiscent of Battlefront 2's narrative of the 501st Legion, being that they were a portion of a grander conflict. It's a bit of the same way with Renegade. It's also structured pretty similarly. You begin a level with a narrative setup for a conflict, then boom, you start playing. You gotta win a battle on that front. Know what I'm talking about? Level 2 is again showing you the ropes, but this time it's all about space combat. found the piloting was pretty satisfying with the autopilot and the free flying intermixed in. The PSP definitely didn't struggle without having a right stick compared to infantry combat, because truly the only reason you need a right stick on the console game is to twirl your ship around. So right stick, not super necessary on this one. And look, I hate to say it again and again, but vibes are very Battlefront 2 on a PSP and space combat too. You at all liked Battlefront 2 and you want more Battlefront 2, you'd probably like this as well. Especially if you were dumb and 8 years old like me. I'm not saying if you like it, you're dumb. I'm just saying I'm dumb and I was 8 years old when I played this. Level 3 is them setting you loose to play some ground combat. Typically, objectives in the mission are search and destroy or capture the item, and they rarely deviate from that mode of operation. In a perfect world, I would have liked more variation and innovation with these objectives. Like in the previous games, at the very least, the campaigns would feature a number of environmental or native planetary hazards, such as the Acklay on Felucia, or Tusken Raiders on Tatooine, or Ewoks on Endor, or Gungan on Naboo. Renegade doesn't really have much of those extras that really brings these worlds to life and adds a bit of extra chaos into the mix when maybe you weren't expecting it. This mission, though, was truly a simple one, and it's like fine, it's passable. The arena is a bit small for me. It's one of the few ones that aren't basically pulled off of the Battlefront 2 disc, so I will give them a little extra credit for that. I just think that in a shooter like this, the maps you can come up with and the iconic areas you can create really shape how you experience it. These levels are the only way the players interact with the worlds. This is the lens from which we view the game, which is why there is a slight sense of disappointment as we continue on and play more levels. The next one is a space level that had 2 whole objectives. You shoot the defenses and the TIE fighters, and then you board the destroyer to save Admiral Akbar. Still doesn't stop me from dying in the most embarrassing way possible.
Fucked up. What the hell? Why would he do that to me?
So I noted here that it's very funny how identical this game is to Battlefront 2. Down to the very assets they used for everything, it's all basically the exact same minus controls and loadouts. Maybe even the resolutions are the same on the textures of these assets. That's a bit of a joke, but the fact that you could imagine a world where they actually are the same texture resolution, yeah, that says a lot about a society, man. Think about that for a minute. During this mission, I also learned of a combat mechanic where you can hold down the auto-aim trigger for long enough and it will recenter your reticle and allow for headshots. This is cool, but it takes so long to do that it's not super useful on the fodder stormtroopers, which is what you fight 99% of the time. But I assume it would be good enough to use against the more tanky enemies if they existed, or hero characters if we ever have a chance to fight any. Or if you're trying to conserve ammo for some reason, though ammo is either infinite or always available, so whatever. Next mission takes place on Tatooine, where the map is like a half-size version of the Battlefront 2 map. You capture some command posts, you shoot up the place, you blow up some shield generators, shoot some more guys, can't forget that part, and then you head out.
One aboard. And hold on, we're getting out of here.
Next level features a map that is actually unique, not in Battlefront 2. Ba's Pity is one long corridor of a map. All the action is funneled running down one lane. It also includes an AT-AT that you gotta let kill you a bit before you can progress the mission. But eventually, you get off this planet too, of course, and then go to the next level. But I want to take a moment here to mention that Ba's Pity, at least when I played it on Galactic Conquest, has that AT-AT spawn reoccurringly. I fought it twice in one game, which kind of jump scared me when it spawned the second time. I just think that's worth mentioning because that seems like one of the few moments where the game throws a bone your way. It adds some sort of unique hazard or unique benefit to a specific team. I applaud you developers for adding something to make the world feel a little more different. And just to mention here as well, in the game there are actually a few other unique maps as well. Korriban appears later in the campaign and is my personal favorite. Sullust is a map that appears in the campaign as well, but I don't like it that much. And then there's Soliokami. I'm going with that. It's my second favorite map that's unique to this game. It's not in the campaign, but it's also a very pretty map, especially compared to the other muddy green-brown map slops. Anyways though, we all know about the classic Hoth battle. The It's where you defend from AT-ATs, but that's not what we do here. When we go back to Hoth, instead we play a half version of the Battlefront 2 map where you simply defend your allies from stormtroopers and shoot down one AT-AT at least, but you only shoot it down from a turret. They did not let us fly in the snowspeeder, I fear, but then guess who shows up to try and stop you?
What the hell? Come on, man. Didn't even fucking give me a chance. Fuck off.
And that's the first time we see any semblance of heroes and villains being present in this game too, so I take that as a huge dub for including the OP enemies in the campaign. Very cool. But when I made my way to Instant Action and Galactic Conquest later on, it was easy to see how much better the heroes with the guns are than heroes with melee weapons. PSP controls just ain't cut out for those quick, fluid, snappy movements that you would need for melee combat in a 3D space. IMO. It's just me thinking. By this point in the campaign, I kind of feel like y'all are getting the picture, right? I know I was. A bit of the gamer fatigue was starting to set in around the Hoth level. I was just ready to get it over with. And that's fine. Maybe I'm just old and cranky now. Maybe someone else will like it more than I do. But I do think it's funny to point out how much Battlefront 2 is in my non-Battlefront 2 Battlefront game. Even funnier if you remember that Battlefront 2 itself had a PSP port that I definitely played as well. When I imagine Earth in another timeline, another alternate, less fucked up universe, Renegade might have been an expansion or a title patch to Battlefront 2. But with the nature of the market and the tech available at the time, DLCs and easily distributed expansion packs, idle updates, and post-launch support weren't really things yet. Not anywhere near to the degree that we see these days, at least. So we got what feels like Battlefront 2.5, which, to be clear, I don't think is bad inherently, especially for when and what it came out on. As much new stuff as Renegade brings to the table, as much as I liked it growing up, I still won't sit here and say it's like a must play or anything. Especially with the power of contemporary emulation methods or Steam versions of old Battlefronts, or just straight up still having your old hardware, you could easily just play those old ones instead and have a much smoother, more complete Star Wars Battlefront experience. Hell, even the EA games are popping off lately, like you could even play those. And then if you really feel like it'll be worth playing Renegade after all of that, go for it. I don't freaking care what you do, man. Just remember me when you make it big, bro. As a full recap, Renegade does have its own unique original plotline. That was alright. The game overall still does feel good despite many reused environments. It does have some of its own unique maps as well, such as Baw's Pity or Korriban or Sullust. There is also this cool thing that I noticed in a space battle part that I think is unique to Renegade. It's like an actual neutral command post in the middle of a space arena that when captured spawns unique pilotable ships that you can use against your enemy.
We've captured a command post.
But most importantly though, Renegade has that loadout system that I glazed. That can give you at least a few hours of messing around with combinations to see how overpowered you could feasibly get. It still feels and plays like Battlefront because largely it is Battlefront 2. How good or bad that is depends on who's holding the handheld console. So now definitely feels like a great time to take a look at our second game on the docket, Star Wars Battlefront Elite Squadron. I definitely had less high hopes going in, especially with the fairly medium bar that Renegade set for us. And then we see the cool title screen animation, and that sets the stage for the game seamlessly. Now we know they ain't messing around this time. Just like Renegade, I wanted to start off Elite by getting through its single-player campaign missions and kind of compare how I felt about these to how I feel about Renegades. Don't worry, we don't have to do a whole mission-by-mission review, I promise. I won't complain too much about the controls this time, but it was still my legal right and my legal choice to legally play a legal copy of a legal squadron with a PS5 controller on my PC. It was still kind of funny to fumble around the sticks. It still makes me look goofy, games journalist looking ass, but this time it took me much less time to get used to it and get through the tutorial. Elite is a game that starts off in the trenches of the Clone Wars. I love the Clone Wars. so that's a plus for me. Also a nice time to mention that most maps in this game, even the tutorial level, are unique creations as far as the Battlefront series is concerned. More on that later. So right now we'll stick to gameplay. So in Elite Squadron, missions are generally pretty long, but they kind of follow a consistent pattern that you'll pick up on when playing through the campaign. You either start a battle in space, or you start a battle on the ground. If you start on the ground, you'll do some tasks, but generally you'll be working towards control of an ion cannon. The ion cannons then allow you to destroy shields on the enemy ship. You then go into space, board that enemy ship in space, and then usually destroy most or all of said ship. You'll either do that from within the ship or the outside, sometimes both. And on the other times, you start that mission in space. Usually it begins with battling some small fry in dogfights, and then you go to the enemy ship. While on board, you usually destroy it from either the inside or the outside, but sometimes it is both. And sometimes you shoot an ion cannon onto things on the ground. Then you go down to the ground with a ship, or by using an escape pod, you land on the planet and do some set of tasks to finish the mission. Now you may be wondering, how in the world are you able to go from a mission that starts in one type of battle, that being space or ground, and then convert it in the same mission to the other type of battle? Here's where Elite's key gameplay selling point comes into play. This feature is a first for the series and a big thing Battlefront fans were wishing for ever since space battles were introduced in Battlefront 2. In Elite Squadron, at the push of a button, you're able to transition between battling your enemies in space to battling them on the ground, or vice versa. Now, I'm not sure if they spent all the resources for this game on perfecting their method of transitioning between space and ground combat, but I feel like they were really trying to hammer home this fact that you can indeed transition from ground combat to space combat while in a match. It's just a little something I noticed, like the video from our GOAT tier analysis or whatever. The ability to transition is overall more cool and much more immersive for this game. It's just one of the things that I wish made it into a more mainline release with more powerful hardware. Something else I immediately noticed about Elite is that unlike in Renegade, the customization of loadouts and the player characters are a bit more hidden, but it seems to be basically the exact same system that was there in Renegades. You still got your 100 points to build a loadout around, but this time, some of your choices are locked until you complete certain tasks, like beating the campaign on the highest difficulty, or completing all the medals in the medal section of the profile. The biggest difference I found is that instead of just one loadout that you can take around and change on the fly as you need it like in Renegade, they instead opted to give you a bunch of default loadouts plus 3 more loadouts to customize how you see fit. I think this is also really smart. The default loadouts check all the boxes that you might need in a real battle or for a campaign mission without interrupting the gameplay too hard, by giving you some quick select options, but it also keeps the exact same freedom we had in the last game by using the custom loadouts. This sounds great and all, but when you're stupid like me, I literally couldn't take advantage of any of the loadout system until after I already beat the campaign. You may give me the benefit of the doubt because I'm the YouTuber, but the truth will be told, I literally just didn't see the big fat edit button staring me in the face for the few times that I actually scrolled over the custom slots. I never even bothered to look into the profile section because, like, why would I? I admit my own hubris got in the way, but all I would do to fix this huge, glaring, game-breaking problem is to just put the customization back on the main screen like it was in Renegade. Just make it a priority. Also, if I may complain just a bit more, I feel like there's a lot less tact and a lot less polish placed into these loadout menus this time around. Now it's small decals that attempt to portray what kind of weapon or ability you're selecting in the menu versus the large and very readable menu icons and rendered images available that were in Renegade. I personally think this is a step back, but there were so many other steps forward that I don't think it makes the system worse by any degree. It's just something that was very easy to notice when Renegade had such a core focus on loadouts, and that's a little bit of extra care that just made it stand out better for me. And something else I think Elite Squadron deserves high praise for is that they basically went all in on designing unique level layouts and sometimes designing completely new planets and environments that haven't ever made it into a Battlefront series up to this point, at least when it comes to each of the planets you visit during the campaign. Like in Battlefront 2, for example, the Coruscant level takes place in the Jedi Library, since that's where Anakin took the 501st. In Elite Squadron, the Coruscant level seems to be based on the Battle of Coruscant when Grievous and his army invaded. The map is centered around the Senate building. It's highly outdoors and it's during daylight, which I think is very cool. There's Dantooine as well. It's okay. There's playable parts on the Death Star itself, pretty cool. Yavin 4 has a unique battleground. Even Hoth has a different layout than I was used to compared to Renegade and Battlefront 2. They even bothered to include Vyun and Darth Vader's Bass Castle, which is not at all something I would have expected, and there's still so many more things. Plus, it's not just the layout that makes these planets and battlefields more interesting than Renegades, it's the environmental details and the extra effort that went into making landmarks, textures, 3D models, and more. All things that help make each location uniquely recognizable. Think things like Yavin 4's cobblestone fountain, the streets and the Senate room of Coruscant, the conference room in the Death Star. It felt like a ton of effort was happening in these pieces of the game, and that's what I loved most about this one. Another thing I found cool in Elite Squadron, no matter how simple of an addition it is that they gave infantry melee weapons, as seen here with me and Mace Windu stun-locking Grievous with. Or me trying my best to make it work during this instant action game. Each individual mission is way longer in Elite Squadron than anything in Renegade. They may even be pretty comparable to how long they were in Battlefront 2, maybe even longer than that. Each of them feature decent story and plot reasons to go where you go, along with that classic Star Wars-esque dialogue that I'm more than used to at this point.
Get to an Arc 170, X2. This is where the fun begins.
And I think that's a good time to bring us back around to the story itself. This is what they present to you in Elite from the very first moments of loading up the game. In general, we get a lot more voice acting than before, a lot more of the story happens in the missions rather than between them like they did in Renegade, and we still have fairly well animated in-engine cutscenes during the missions themselves too, but the trade-off is that a lot of the footage between the missions is just straight up ripping it from the 6 main movies, which is like whatever, I guess. I prefer not doing that, but it is what it is. We got some Clone Wars era business in the beginning, and then we moved on relatively quickly to the Rebellion era. We are mainly centered around a relationship between X1 and X2. Their relationship culminates in some post-Battle of Endor stuff that's at the end of the game, which I think is pretty cool. I'm no lore nerd or anything, but I was not unsatisfied by what I played through. The summary is that X1 and X2, twin brothers who are clones, but not from Jango Fett, but secretly made using DNA from a Jedi. They both were tasked to train clones before the war and fought during the Clone Wars itself, and were part of the Order 66 massacre. The deaths of the Jedis, particularly the leader of their own section of the army, divides X1 and X2 ideologically, where X1 stays put with the newly formed Empire, while X2 joins the Rebellion, having regrets about his role in Order 66. I assume this is before the inhibitor chip thing. X1 and X2 become mortal enemies in this regard. X2 finds a Jedi, specifically the Jedi who was their source DNA. The Jedi helps X2 find a bit of the Force within himself, and X1 hunts them down. He kills the Jedi that is technically their father, and nearly kills X2. It's a pretty cool cutscene for a PSP game in my O. X1 was cold as hell for this one.
Mission accomplished. Let's go.
X2 keeps fighting for the Rebellion, all the way through the Battle of Endor, where he even meets Cole Sarah. Remember that guy, y'all? But eventually, X2 starts exhibiting some Force-related abilities, until fully donning a lightsaber and becoming a Jedi. You can then play as Jedi X2 for a few levels before facing X1 on all planets Mustafar. X2 comes out on top in the end. Woohoo, yippee, happy Star Wars ending. I thought the actual story content was like, as positively as I can say it, just fine. I probably won't replay it again for another 10 years or never again or whatever, but I appreciate what they were going for. I like that they had the guts to bring a new story to the table. I just wish, again, that it could have been done on the big screen of a PS3 or even a PS2. There's not much to be done about that from production or developer or consumer standpoint, but yeah, it's just my thoughts on that. What I also think is that they were really, trying to make Elite Squadron stand out a lot more from Battlefront 2 than Renegade Squadron did. And while they were trying to stand out, they were still trying to keep that fundamental feeling of a Battlefront game, and I think they pulled it off. And I respect them a lot for at least trying to take many steps to move forward and move past its previous entries, despite Battlefront 2 being such a beloved title. I think a lot of what they were trying to do did work out for me, even if it can come across a little bit underbaked when you compare the home console games to those handheld games. It's not like the PSP doesn't have some well-made and fun titles on it, like Daxter, but I can only imagine how difficult it must have been to try and make a follow-up to the insanely popular and insanely well-received and insanely innovative series Battlefront, but on a handheld console. A handheld that, firstly, feels pretty weird to play shooters on without that right stick, you gotta admit that. And secondly, it doesn't exactly keep up with the power level of the console that the previous entries were on, let alone to be most likely working on a time crunch and most likely a limited budget and possibly allegedly having to use assets from a canceled version of what was supposed to be the actual follow-up, the one that was never allowed to be released for some ungodly reason. I can only assume Elite Squadron is the best version of what could have been made given all of the real-life circumstances at play here, unfortunately. Please leak the Battlefront 3 files, Rebellion. Outside of that, we can recap Elite Squadron like this. A lot of the fundamental game, like loadouts and shooting mechanics, remains the same, which is good. There's such an interesting level of attention to detail all throughout the game too, like escape pods being present in capital ships, the detailed 3D models and textures present on each planet. Each transition from space and ground stays consistent with the ship or thing you're actually flying in at the time. It seemingly also has more aggressive and smarter AI than Renegade had too, and so many more things that you can pick out in this game. I just can't shake the feeling that Elite Squadron could have been an all-timer under better circumstances. So I guess at this point, after we've gone through the campaigns, what's left? Well, back on the 2 original Battlefront games, the post-story gameplay for us little babies was basically to have infinite fun forever by playing on your favorite maps and playing with your favorite heroes or villains on your favorite faction, whether that be through instant action or galactic conquest or whatever. Here on the PSP, we still got some of those classic game modes. There's Original Conquest, where you need to run out the enemy's tickets or capture all the command posts. We got both versions of Capture the Flag, they're still here. There's also a new hero Capture the Flag, which I think is sick, and I think it's new for the PSP games, I think. In this one, the team's hero for that map is also now the base for that team's flag. The hero carries around no matter what, with a permanent wall hack target on their back. In order to defend the flag itself, infantry must protect the hero, rather than the other way around. Heroes have to be defeated in order to acquire the flags. It's kinda cool. Galactic Conquest was always a favorite of mine, and it still is here. I always thought it was cool because it adds some stakes and makes every individual battle mean you either come one step closer or you take one step back from liberating the galaxy or controlling it with an iron fist. But I guess, is that all there really is? If y'all don't mind, I'll be getting sentimental about the impact some toys from my childhood had on me. So when I go back nowadays to either the PSP or the classic Battlefronts, whether it's Instant Action or Galactic Conquest or whatever, I'll be totally honest. I feel like there's a kind of sadness I feel when I play these games, but it is very subtle and it brews underneath all the blaster fire. Maybe it comes from a place of being a lot older now, so the bots are just too easy for a gamer such as myself. Kind of. That doesn't really explain it fully to me. So maybe it comes from not being as easily entertained. Like as a kid, it can feel like you could find endless enjoyment from running in circles, but you can't find the same value in that anymore. It's also kind of that. I feel like that gets a little closer to it, but man, if you saw the games I play these days, you definitely wouldn't think it takes a lot to keep me entertained. So maybe it's not that either. I guess to put it another way, when I sit down and I play these modes alone at 26 years old, I mainly feel that sadness manifesting in a strange sense of like longing. It's not exactly nostalgia to me. Nostalgia is more like a feeling of missing things that you actually did experience at one time. But in this case, it's different and more weird. It feels like a wishfulness for a time that never even really existed for me. It's a loneliness that can only form in absence of what could have been, not what was. I can also describe it like this. When I go back and I walk around the old Halo maps, or I walk around some of those old COD maps, for example, I think about all the things that used to happen here. Nothing happens here anymore, but it used to. You can remember moments and feelings when you walk around here of things that actually happened. not here. For some reason, what non-existent event that I missed the most from these Battlefront games is that I never got to experience what their multiplayers could have been like. Just like the PSP itself, all 4 of my favorite Battlefront games feel like they were just too early for their time. I can only pretend to imagine what playing Battlefront Online could have been like, and I'll never know what it was actually like. That's the feeling I'm trying to get at here. That's what makes these games so weird for me now, if that makes sense. Kind of a tangent. You guys remember that insane moment in 2024 where a classic collection that was like a remaster, but also like a re-release of the original 2 Battlefront games came out? Yeah, I was there for that, man. I even streamed some of it. And as poorly executed as that was, just for a moment, I got a glimpse into that alternate reality. One that is sadly not meant to exist in our timeline. And I think it's that same feeling that preceded the mass disappointment that so many people felt with that collection. It's like we were so close, only for it to slip away. The original 2 home console games and the 2 handheld games were just too early, pretty much. They missed the golden age. The EA games were just past the golden age, and they released as heavily monetized, for lack of a better word, slop. And the collection was burdened, in my opinion, by expectations that I'm not sure any studio could have fulfilled. That doesn't absolve them from where they fucked up and for abandoning that shit pretty much, but they had some big shoes to fill. All that being said, just for me to say that I think these PSP games are good. I like Renegade, kinda, but I definitely like Elite. I can't say they're bad because their multiplayer servers aren't running almost 20 years later, or that an emulator doesn't have the infrastructure of PlayStation Network on it. That's not anyone's fault. In fact, I can say that I am happy that these games are even playable to any degree. I'm glad that people have archived them. I'm glad that people made an emulator for the PSP, and I'm glad us people are able to preserve these pieces of work in different ways. It shows me that there's people out there who still care. And if games are nothing but one thing, they are a bunch of people who cared. They were made because of the fact that someone cared to do it. Just like how I cared to go back and play them again, even though I didn't know how wrong my memories were. And you who cared enough to click on this video and sit through all of that so that you too could remember how to care about a piece of something that you probably forgot too. And for me, that's it. Star Wars Battlefront on the goddamn PSP should remind you of nothing else except that you must remember to care. Not just about these few games, but every single one you play, everything you experience in those games. Let all of that remind you what art is, and remind yourself that this is it. Thanks for watching, y'all. Making this video is the least I can do for these games that came out too early for their own good. Yet they still shaped enough of me when I was growing up that I felt like this is something that I needed to make. Sort of like my own version of archiving. It was worth it to get this video to your eyes and ears. So, if you also like to find way too much meaning in your toys, make sure to help Google give me more money by subscribing to the channel. It's free. If you feel like you got something to say, feel free to leave a comment and drop a like while you're down there. If you want to see some more Star Wars adjacent stuff, you can check these out if you want. I got a platinum trophy in Star Wars The Force Unleashed, or you can see what it took for me to get every Xbox achievement in LEGO Star Wars The Complete Saga. I've got plenty of other videos too, not just Star Wars, and I got plenty more of them on the way. And that all being said, see y'all in the next one.